Hi class, welcome to the field of genetics. Genetics is undergoing a major revolution and is brought to the forefront of biology, medicine, and society. In addition to the biological implications, there are many genomic research tools to handle significant moral, or bring to the forefront many moral, political, and socio-economic issues in society. Our course employs a scientific concept and ethics-based structure to critically analyze and address issues related to genetic information and technologies. Topics will include theory, methods of human genetics, cancer, genetic testing, the genetic basis of life, evolution, mental illness, aging, ancestry, and forensics. I hope you enjoy the class. From a definition point of view, genetics is the study of who we are. Genes define who we are. They have the code of life that reside in the nucleus of every cell and form the basis of who we're going to be and how we develop throughout our lifetime. Another big aspect of heredity is heredity, the passing of this genetic information from one generation to the next. A third important aspect of genetics is variation. As genetic information is passed from one generation to the next, variability is increased. And we can use these tools to analyze our phylogeny, where we came from, how similar we are to each other, and many other important aspects in forensics and ancestry and population genetics. In addition to the science, we have a picture there of Watson and Crick showing their three-dimensional wire model of DNA. It's a lot more than just the model and the chemistry and how DNA replicates itself. In 1953, when Watson and Crick proposed their model, they just finished their paper by saying that they had discovered the secret of life. The very essence of the biological basis of life was embedded and implied from the research about the three-dimensional structure of DNA. So there are many very interesting philosophical aspects related to genetics that are important in understanding how life began, how it develops, and how we grow and become who we are. Genetics has a lot of issues and controversies that we will discuss in our class. For example, the origin of life, evolution and common ancestry, genetic testing for disease, direct consumer testing for disease, genetic discrimination, recombinant genes, making of new organisms, and hybrid organisms. This is the basis of the GMO controversy in society. Eugenics, the patenting of genes, forensic testing, paternity testing, gene therapy, cloning, and stem cell technology. All of these issues are at the forefront as genetic progress has been made and new technologies are proposed almost every day. In a broader sense, we look at genetics as a science of information transfer. In this information transfer, we have the code of life, DNA, which is a linear sequence of bases that resides on our chromosomes. These genes, or particles of inheritance, that, as Mendel described back in the 1850s, provide the code for life. This information is transformed or transmitted to the formation of proteins. And these proteins define who we're going to be. So basically, genetics is the science of information and transfer of the code in the nucleus to protein structure or phenotype of who we are. This is illustrated a little bit better in the central dogma of life, which was proposed by Watson and Crick, where we have up at the top our double-stranded DNA. The code in DNA is transcribed into a single-strand RNA molecule and transduced or changed language into proteins. Over on the right of our picture, we see that this code is called the genotype. It's fixed and protected blueprint and resides in the nucleus of the cell. This information is then expressed via gene transcription to RNA and is regulated and highly variable and provides the message to the proteins for who we're going to become. And then lastly, we have the phenotype, which is the biochemical and structural manifestation of the gene expression. In the pharmaceutical industry, there's been a huge interest recently in modulating gene expression and drug targets as tools based on genetic information. I'd like to finish off with a couple slides which I find very interesting. This has to do with some of the issues that have yet to be resolved in genetics. One of the major unresolved problems in biology is the primary adaptive function of sex. One view is that sex evolved primarily as an adaptation for increasing genetic diversity. It has been proposed and highly accepted that variety in offspring improves the chance of adaptation to changes in environment. So genetics is composed really of a unity to describe who we are and how we are related, but it also provides a mechanism for diversity and adapting to our environment. One of the interesting questions that many students like to entertain in our class is that if you and your siblings receive 1/2 of your genes from dad and 1/2 from mom, why are you different? The answer resides in the fact that your genes are shuffled from one generation to the next, increasing diversity. So even though one child number one, may receive 50% of the DNA from dad, 50% from mom, the second child also receives 50% from mom and 50% from dad, but may receive a different version of those genes, and this increases the diversity in families and the diversity in life and explains evolution and natural selection.